Congratulations on completing the lecture portion of the week 3 module. And now we'll move on to the lab activity portion. And really in this lab activity, what we're doing is giving you additional opportunities to apply everything you just learned in this module. So throughout the lecture module, we had you watch videos and complete mini quizzes to help you apply the information you just learned. We're going to bring all of that together here and give you, like I said, additional practice, really applying this information to make sure it really cements in your memory so you can really learn it. So overall, the scenario that we're working with for this lab activity is we have different mice, and what we're doing is giving these different mice different compounds. So some mice are going to get compound X, some mice are going to get compound Y. And what we're interested in is whether these different compounds are affecting the number of bacteria that are within the gut, so specifically the small intestine of these mice. So in the scenario instructions for this lab, it explains how we have mice that are given these different compounds, and then we're dissecting out the large intestine of these mice. And that large intestine sample is what we're then using to plate out. And then from those plates, we'll estimate the CFUs and figure out the CFU per mil. So the first part of this lab activity is very similar to what you did for one of the quizzes this week, where we ask you to draw out the dilution series and figure out which plate is countable and work backwards to figure out how many bacteria were in your original sample. So remember, again, this overall question that we're trying to address is whether these different compounds X and Y result in different numbers of bacteria in the intestine of the mice. So that's the first part. You're going to draw out the experimental design and work through some of the dilutions. And then the second part of the lab activity, what we'll do is give you some pictures of plates. So on Canvas, in addition to the instructions for the lab activity, you'll also need to download the different plate images. And from those images of plates, what we'll ask you to do is actually count the colony forming units, the CFUs on those plate pictures, and use that information to figure out which of the plates are actually countable. So remember, you only want to use the data from the countable plates. If they're way too many or way too few colonies, you can't use those ones, so keep that in mind. And then from the countable plates, what you'll do is use that information to actually calculate CFU per mil to figure out how many bacteria were originally in that sample that was plated. And when we have you get all the information, just like what we did in the online lecture component, what we'll do is we'll ask you to then enter your data into an Excel spreadsheet. Just like we did online, remember, entering data in is an essential part of being a rigorous scientist. You always want to make sure you keep track of your data. So that's what the second part of the lab you'll do. You'll use those plate images to then enter in data pertaining to CFU per mil in your Excel spreadsheet. So that's the overview for this lab. As I mentioned in some of the announcements I sent out earlier this summer, this activity is very, very similar to what we normally would have done in person in class, but I've shortened it to allow some additional flexibility for all these additional responsibilities that everyone has right now. So please know that you are getting the same content, more or less, that we would get in person, but I have shortened it to reduce your workload a little bit, and I've kept all the essential parts that are really important for your learning. So go ahead and continue through in the module now and work on the lab activity, and of course reach out if you have questions, but hopefully based on what you learned in the lecture module, this should be pretty directly building on all of that information. So you should be able to complete it. If not, let me know and I'll help you out.